I'm Ted Keys in Pasadena, California. Welcome to my Tuesday conference call, a free high-powered meeting I hold live every Tuesday for top producing freight agents. Go to tedkeysonline.com for complete call information. Then join us weekly to see new, serious, struggling, and experienced sales professionals move more freight efficiently, effectively, effortlessly, and make more money financially. So watch my recorded call topic highlighted there on your screen right now. When you're finished, go to tedkeysonline.com and hear more podcasts. Read more blog posts, watch more videos, and while you're there, visit my Freight Sales Success Store for top-notch freight moving products to explode your business today. Enjoy watching and applying my Tuesday conference call.
Hello and welcome everybody again to my Tuesday conference call, where every Tuesday I show you how to move more freight, move it more effectively, more efficiently, more proficiently, where you provide the service to your customers and prospects that you've built a relationship with, and to do it successfully. Today's topic is win-win freight negotiations. Win-win freight negotiations. I say that because when you negotiate effectively, both parties win. That means that you win, and A, your customer wins, and B, the carrier that actually moves your freight wins. So today I'm going to talk about win-win freight negotiations. Now, as usual, on every email, I send out a number of attachments for you to follow along with. Go to your email that I sent to you today. Look down to those attachments. The first one that we're going to look at, as we usually do, is our agent leaderboard. And I'll say this, when you become an active agent of ours, one of your main goals, among others, the first goal is obviously to connect with the marketplace where you can actually provide the service of moving freight. Once you start doing that, make it a goal to get on our agent leaderboard. Just getting on the board and moving up the ranks shows you that you are progressing forward. And I will say this, it doesn't happen overnight. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. You are actually starting from ground zero, moving up. And I'll tell you this, it takes several months. It takes several months, let me say that again, if you do things correctly, if you do take our tools and training and apply them to our standards or the standards that I suggest in those. Let's go ahead and open that second attachment. Go ahead and open the second attachment. Negotiating and sticking to your rate. Now, let me describe a scenario where you've developed a relationship with your prospect and you brought them in as a customer. Or it could just be a prospect. Hey, they happen to put you on their freight list. They asked you for a freight rate. You followed all the guidelines that I provided for you in coming up with a freight rate. And it's a load you really want. You really desire the load, and starting off, you obviously require the business just to get something going. However, you feel that the price you quoted is too high. You feel that your price is too high. What do you do? What do you do when you feel that way? Do you lower your price? Well, I can tell you right now, if you lower your price, that is a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake when you lower your price, especially if your prospect or customer hasn't asked you to. But even if they do ask you to, they say, hey, your price is too high. Do you lower it? Well, I'll tell you right now, if you do, it's a huge mistake. Let me read on here. Most freight sales agents are afraid to stand by their price structure because this is what they assume. And again, they just assume this. That's not saying whether it's true or not. They just assume this. They assume if I refuse to lower my price, I'll lose the deal. Well, here's the truth. The reality is the opposite. If you aren't prepared to defend your price, your customer will lose respect for you. And that's even a bigger mistake. Here's why it's a bigger mistake. The last thing that you want to, the last feeling that you want to leave in your prospect or your customer's mind is that you are the cheap freight broker that they can always go to for the cheap freight price. So let me say it again. The reality is the opposite. If you aren't prepared to defend your price, your customer will lose respect from you, an even bigger mistake. So what's the solution? Well, here's the best solution. The best solution is this, and that is be prepared to defend the price of your service by the value you provide with it. You should never sell yourself short or apologize for the price of a service that you believe in. Have the required confidence in yourself and your service to walk away if you must. Now, am I saying walk away from your customer or prospect? No. Walk away from this one opportunity. And this, always have a full funnel of contacts so you're not dependent on any one load. This is why I tell you in our Freight Sales Success Guide, and I repeat over and over again, always be connecting and building relationships with the marketplace, i.e., always acquire 3 new contacts per day that you can put in your funnel and always be connecting with. So, let me repeat that again. Always have a full funnel of contacts so you're never dependent on any one load. Be able to justify your price and make the buyer work for any concessions made along the way. Make sure you've qualified your prospect to eliminate lost or wasted time. And what I mean by that is this: when you're a starting freight agent in this profession, unfortunately, you don't necessarily know who you're talking to initially. And unfortunately, a lot of the folks that we deal with initially for the first time, they just send us their freight lists, and it's a freight list that a lot of other brokers have access to, so the rates are extremely competitive, and they're typically on the cheap side. So make sure you've qualified your prospect to eliminate lost or wasted time. How do you do that? You do that over time. You don't know initially, but as you get better and better and better at this, you'll know how to qualify your prospect a lot quicker. Ask them for the price point whenever possible, and that's how you qualify them. I mean, if you feel that this is a prospect that pays a little low on the rate, ask them, hey, what rate are you expecting to pay? Utilize all your strengths and communication skills to not only close the sale, but also leave your customer with a great feeling as often as possible. So that's just a general scenario on what happens here when you're negotiating but sticking to your rate. Now, in the Freight Sales Success Guide, I have a whole topic on guidelines for quoting rates. I've done that in a number of other calls. Today we're talking about negotiating and sticking to your rate. More on the sticking to your rate after you've quoted it, or after you've negotiated or quoted and negotiated it. Let's X out of there, guys. Let's open up our third attachment. And today we're going to go over the 8 tips, 8 solid tips for negotiating freight rates. Now, I'm not going to get into the actual number that we give to our prospect. These are tips for negotiating freight rates. Here's tip number 1, and that is you, as a freight agent, a freight professional in this industry, you're entitled to reasonable compensation. I stress reasonable. Well, what's reasonable? It's what you convince your buyer what your service is worth, and the key is value. The key is the value that you specifically provide. Now, you're going to ask me, well, how do I do that when I don't know the customer right away? Well, you won't. You have to prove this over time. But if you've moved a number of loads for a customer and you're still getting paid these lower or cheaper freight rates, It's because you have not proven yourself. You have not convinced your buyer of what your service is worth. So, tip number 1, you are entitled to reasonable compensation. Tip number 2, never, ever sell yourself short. And that is, be ready to say and believe when you say it, my service is great and my customers are happy to pay my rates. When you have this idea in your mind, that is going to exude through your confidence. It's going to exude through the words that you tell your prospect and your customer. So be ready to say and believe it when you say it, my service is great and my customers are happy to pay my rates. Although it's the same thing. Are you going to say that for the first load that you move for somebody? No. This is something that you have to develop and prove over time. Number 3, don't apologize for your rates. Let me say it again. Don't apologize for your rates. Once you establish the value of your service, present your price with confidence and don't apologize when your rates are high or if you think or feel they're too high. Quote your rate and stick to it. Let me say it again. Quote your rate and stick to it. Number 4 is be willing to walk away if you must. Be willing to walk away if you must. When you have a full funnel that you're working with, a full funnel of contacts, you're able to do this. And when you have that, that means that you have other options. When you have other options, when you have other potential sales in the funnel that don't hinge on one deal, you'll exude confidence. Because here's what's going to happen. If you walk away, you know you have other options. It's that simple. And again, when I say walk away, I mean walk away from accepting a rate that your customer wants you to pay, but you don't want to. So be willing to walk away. When you have a full funnel, that gives you the confidence that you have other options. Number 5, be ready to justify your price. I mean, if they ask, be ready to justify your price. And that is create your own price legitimacy and believe what you bring to the market as a professional freight agent. Focus on the value of your service and not on the price. Again, can you do this initially with a new prospect, a new customer? No. Now, if they were a referral to you, if some other customer referred them to you, you can. But if this is somebody that you developed the relationship from the get-go, it's going to be a little challenging, but be ready to justify your price. Main key here is focus on the value of your service and not on the price. These are all skills that you'll develop as you get better and better and better at this profession. One moment. Number 6, if you must, if your customer wants you to lower the price, well, here's an option. Ask your customer for concessions. Go ahead and ask them, hey, you want me to lower your price? Well, you want me to do this. Well, can you do this? So I can do that. Let me read on here. If you ever lower your price, make your customer earn it. Ask for concessions in return, such as additional loads. Okay, I'll do this load for you, but knowing that you can cover it, when will you have it again? When you have it again, will you send it directly to me and not throw this out there on your freight list? Things like that. Or if this is a customer that you've been dealing with, but they're slow on the payment, hey, ask them, I'll do this for you at that rate, but you got to pay me quicker. That's asking for a concession. It's you giving, but they have to give as well. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Can you do it right away? No. This is something that you develop as your relationship with your customer increases and gets stronger and stronger. Number 7, qualify your customers from the start, from the beginning. Again, can you do this initially with a new customer? No. You learn this over time. Although it says qualify your customers from the start, there are certain points that you can pick up on to know whether your customer is not, it does not pay market rates or not. They're considered a low scale paying customers. But sometimes believe it or not, sometimes you're actually wasting your time with a customer or a prospect. If you feel your customer is a cheap payer, then ask them, what are you expecting to pay? So they throw this, they get you on, they put you on their freight list. You post these loads. You post the rate that you feel that you should cover this for, and the carriers call you and they laugh at the rates you give to the carriers. Well, that's an indication that something is amiss here. So go back to your customer. Ask them, what are you expecting to pay on this? What are you expecting to pay on this? You're going to get this for a lot of general commodities type loads here. So do your best to qualify your customers from the start if you have to, and when you do, if you deem that they're a cheaper payer, just move on. It's that simple. Number 8, leave your customer feeling great. Leave your customer with a great feeling. Sell your unique strengths and provide reasonable justification for your service. Let your customer feel like they're getting one-of-a-kind service. When they feel like they're getting one-of-a-kind service, then they'll be more open to negotiate a better rate with you. So when you do a load for the first time, provide them with the best service that you can think of. Let them know, hey, the load is picking up at X, or A. B, let them know that the load has been picked up. C, let them know the load is in motion. D, let them know the ETA on the arrival. That's providing great one-of-a-kind service. So number 8, leave your customer feeling great. These are 8 tips for negotiating freight rates. Now, can you do number 8 before you do a load? No. You've got to do several loads in order for actually a few of these incidents to happen. But with any relationship, you've got to start the process. You've got to get a load or 2 in the system so they can actually see what you do in order for you to utilize these tips for negotiating better freight rates in the future. Let's move on from there and open the next attachment. Move on from there, open the next attachment. The next attachment states this: the major obstacle that prevents you from getting the price you desire initially is the fear of rejection. So here's what happens when you have this fear of rejection. What happens is this: a typical way of dealing with this fear is to lower your price. That's a typical way of dealing with this fear when you have this fear of rejection, that your customer, your prospect is going to reject your price. And that is to lower your price. Well, here's the deal. That's the easy way and the bad way. If you do that, again, you're going to create this impression in your customer prospect's mind that you are the cheap freight mover. And here's what's going to happen. They're going to go to you if they're looking for that cheap rate. That's one thing you don't want to. So, in review, it's the easy way, but it's the bad way. Unfortunately, freight sales agents typically take the easier way out. And that's the biggest mistake you can make when you quote a rate and then you lower the rate. And not only that, but lower it significantly. Now, I have a customer that every time he calls, and again, he calls me once a week. I move several loads for him a week. He calls me. I give him a rate. He asks me, can I do better? Or he'll say, if I quote him $2,400, he'll say, can you do $2,200? I'll say, well, I can't do 22, but I can do 23.75. Well, what am I dropping down? I'm dropping down $25, but I'm dropping $25. I'm not dropping $200. Again, I do this because I know I can cover the load for still significantly less. But yeah, there are times when I actually lower my rate. But this is a personal thing that we have going back and forth. This is something that he's always attempting to do with me, and I play his game. But starting off, before you even do a load, if you lower your rate when your customer asks you to, well, unfortunately, you've already created the impression in the mind that this is my cheap freight guy. So your belief in yourself and your service will always be your best weapon. Your self-confidence will be rewarded when you stick to your guns. So you ask me, well, Ted, how do I get the load then? Hang tight here, folks. So how do I get the load? Well, you get the load by quoting a rate and sticking to it. Are you going to get it the first time? Maybe. Yes, no, I don't know. But the last thing you want to do is leave an impression in your mind that you are the low freight guy. So my advice is when you quote a rate, stick to it. There will always be another rate to move. Moving on, let's go to our next attachment there. Hang tight here. Let's talk about rate rejections. Let's talk about what happens when your rate is rejected. So you've stuck to your gun, all right? You stuck to your guns on your rate, and your rate's rejected. Here's my advice. My advice will always be the same. Always respond to rate requests. Always respond to rate requests. You get a rate request, you respond to it. If you don't respond, don't expect to get much business from your customer if you don't respond to the rate request. Now, here's an initial challenge working with a new customer prospect. And that is, it's common to have your rates rejected initially when you're building a relationship with a customer. It's common. It's very common, and hey, that's just part of the game. But as I said earlier, they will have more freight. But here are the common reasons why a customer prospect may reject your rate. One, your price is too high. You're not familiar with the lanes are doing yet, so your price is too high. Well, as I said earlier, stick to your price. But your price is too high. Number two, your customer doesn't know you yet. Your customer doesn't know you yet. Number three, your customer doesn't trust you yet. And number four, your customer prefers its current carriers. Now, sometimes that's a game the customers play with us just to see what we'll do if they ask us to lower our rate. Well, I'm telling you again, if you're going to preserve your integrity, stick with what you quoted them. Even if your price is too high, stick with what you quoted them. But here's what happens when your rate is rejected. Here's your solution, folks. Everyone enjoys receiving a compliment, even you. Everyone enjoys receiving a compliment. Everybody does. So when your rate is rejected, when you feel that you've stuck to your gun, your rate's too high, use the response below when your rate is rejected. This will allow you to continue building the relationship with your customer and prospect. And here's your response. Your response is, that's a great rate. Now, that's provided they gave you the rate, all right? That's provided they gave you the rate. But if they give you the rate, if they reject you, then ask them, hey, what did the rate go for? There's a high probability that they will tell you. And here's your response. That's a great rate. What else are you working on right now? Either verbally, via email, telephone. Here's your response. That's a great rate. What else are you working on right now? That keeps the line of communication open. And you're finishing by asking an open-ended question. Open-ended questions typically will require a response from the person being asked. So one more time, that's a great rate. What else are you working on right now? Let's talk about when you're put on a freight list, and there are hundreds of other freight brokers or carriers on that list. Let's talk about that. Here's what you should first do if you ever see a freight list where you are one of many, many, many on the list. The first thing is, don't get deflated when email freight lists like the one I provided here in this attachment appear with a customer's request. And that is a freight list. One second here, folks. That is a freight list with a number of other agents on there. Don't get deflated when you see these. Don't get rejected or dejected. Don't get dejected when you see this, because here I'm going to go over this real quick. Here's a fact fact about large email freight lists like the one in the attachment. Here are facts. Number one, first of all, it takes a long time to gather this type of information. Your customer prospect didn't just accumulate all these contacts overnight. They accumulated this over a long period of time. Could be a couple of years. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this: the information gets old over time. When you see a freight list like this, just remember that a lot of these folks aren't even in business anymore, and a lot of them don't even pay attention to the requests that their customer and prospect gives them. So number two, the information gets old over time. Number three, freight managers, freight shipping decision makers don't update this type of information. I mean, if they had to update for every active freight broker that's on their list, it would take them a huge amount of time. And what's important to them is that they get the request out there. So freight managers typically don't update their freight list information. Number four, so a large amount of the emails don't get out. That's one reason, because a lot of the information is old and outdated. Number five, brokers don't respond. Most brokers will not respond when they see large lists like this. They look at it and they say, oh, how will I get this load here? You know, when I'm competing against all these different folks that are on this freight list here. So most brokers typically won't respond when they see a large list like this. Number six, the responses that your customer or your prospect gets is typically 5 to 10%. I would say it's even less than that. I'm going to say it's between 1 and 5% of the actual people on a freight list like this that respond to a freight request. So if you see this, remember when you respond, you're one of anywhere from 3 to 4 other people that are responding with a list like this. So as I said earlier, always, always, always respond to rate requests, no matter how many or whoever is on that list, if you ever get the opportunity to see a list like this. So in general, always, always respond to rate requests in general. If you don't respond, how will you ever get a load? No, really, how will you ever get a load if you don't respond? Okay, let's move out of there. Let's X out of there. Let me go over a couple more topics on calling our customers and prospects. Remember, for the next attachment, remember when you're calling your customers and prospects that knowledge isn't power. You can go to a class, say a freight broker class, and take in all this knowledge and think, wow, I just finished a freight broker class. Well, let me tell you this, none of that matters unless you apply it. So knowledge is not the power, it's the application of that knowledge that is powerful. One more time, when you're calling your customers and prospects, knowledge isn't power, it's the application of that knowledge that is powerful. So, I can talk to you till I'm blue in the face, but unless you actually take this information and apply it, that's where you develop the power. It's not the knowledge, it's the application of that knowledge that makes it powerful. And here's the thing, you've got to apply it over and over and over again to develop the skills of whatever it is you're applying. Let's go to our last attachment. Last attachment, remember when you're calling prospects and customers, and that is success comes before work only in the dictionary. Success comes before work only in the dictionary. In reality, we must work before we become successful. One more time, we must work before we become successful. So success only comes before work. Success comes before work only in the dictionary. For some reason, I got tongue-tied there. Okay, great topic today. Win-win freight negotiation skills. Now, is this something to pay attention to if you're a beginning agent? No. The first thing you have to do as a beginning agent is connect and make contact with the marketplace. These are skills that you will utilize and develop over time. This is one of those skills that comes later. However, start thinking about it now, because negotiating freight rates is one of the most valuable skills that you can learn in this profession. Questions, comments on this call that I just gave today, or if you have a desire to become a top producing freight agent, give me a call at 626-309-9141. If you have any questions about our LDI freight system and you are already a top producing freight agent with our office, any questions about our LDI freight system, those are directed to Marilyn, our assistant, or Maria, my wife. You will call the same number, 626-309-9141. Take this information in, analyze it, put it to use. It will only benefit you in the long run. Take care, folks. God bless you all. We will talk to you soon.
You've just taken a tremendous step forward by watching and applying my Tuesday conference call highlight. Do you desire to earn and learn with our top freight team and Christian-based office? Yes? We're searching for a self-starter who's serious, motivated, and ready to take action right now. Is that you? Go to tedkeysonline.com/contacts and enter your contact details. We provide top-notch freight agent sales training to you. Then you deliver those same skills with confidence to the freight industry marketplace. I'll talk to you soon.